In an affluent neighborhood where perfection is currency, the Richards family seems to have it all: wealth, status, and charm. But behind closed doors of their mansion lies a web of dark secrets that their mute young son, Ethan, desperately wants to reveal. When Delilah Martinez, their kind-hearted housekeeper, notices disturbing signs and a mysteriously locked basement, she begins to suspect something sinister lurks beneath the family's polished exterior. As Ethan's silent pleas for help grow more urgent, Delilah must decide whether to risk everything, including custody of her own daughter, to uncover the truth. But time is running out, and the stakes are higher than she could ever imagine. But before we dive into this story, tell us in the comments from where you are watching from today, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawn of the Richards estate, where crystal champagne flutes clinked and polite laughter floated through the air. The annual neighborhood charity gala was in full swing, and Jacob Richards worked the crowd like a master conductor, his perfectly tailored suit and million-dollar smile drawing people into his orbit. Ladies and gentlemen, Jacob's voice carried across the garden, commanding instant attention. Caroline and I are deeply touched by your generous support of the Children's Hope Foundation this evening. He wrapped an arm around his wife's waist, and she beamed up at him with practiced adoration. Caroline Richards was the picture of refined elegance in her pale blue cocktail dress, her blonde hair swept into an artful updo. "We believe every child deserves a chance at a bright future," she added, her voice honey-sweet. In the background, Delilah Martinez moved efficiently between guests, replacing empty glasses and collecting used napkins. At 35, she carried herself with quiet dignity despite the service uniform she wore. Her dark eyes missed nothing as they swept across the gathering, inevitably finding their way to 8-year-old Ethan Richards. The boy sat alone beneath a maple tree, small fingers tracing patterns in the grass. Unlike the other children running and playing games, Ethan remained still, his shoulders hunched as if trying to make himself invisible. Delilah's heart ached at the sight. "More champagne, Mrs. Whitaker," she offered, approaching a group of women engaged in animated conversation. "Oh, thank you, Delilah," Margaret Whitaker said, exchanging her empty glass. She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "The Richards are so fortunate to have found you, especially with Ethan's special needs." Delilah kept her expression neutral, though her grip tightened slightly on the serving tray. She'd been working for the Richards family for 6 months now, taking the job when her previous housekeeping position hadn't paid enough to cover both rent and her daughter Mia's school supplies. The Richards paid well, very well, but something about the household never felt quite right. Speaking of which, another woman chimed in. "Caroline never did tell us what happened with the boy. Was it a birth defect? An accident?" "I couldn't say, ma'am," Delilah replied politely. "If you'll excuse me." She made her way toward Ethan, who had begun fidgeting with the buttons on his dress shirt. As she approached, his eyes lifted to meet hers, and the shadow of a smile touched his lips. "Would you like some juice?" Delilah asked, simultaneously signing the words. She'd been learning American Sign Language since starting work with the family, though she'd noticed Ethan seemed to already know it quite well. Ethan nodded, his movements quick and bird-like. Delilah poured him apple juice from a crystal pitcher, handling it carefully. But as she passed him the glass, Ethan's trembling hands caused it to slip, sending juice spilling across the pristine lawn. "Ethan!" Caroline's sharp voice cut through the air. She hurried over, her heels sinking into the grass. "How many times have we told you to be more careful?" Jacob appeared behind his wife, his earlier charm replaced by a tight-lipped expression. "Go inside and change," he ordered, though his smile never wavered for the watching guests. "Now." Ethan's lower lip quivered, but no sound escaped him. His eyes darted between his parents before landing on Delilah with silent desperation. "It was my fault, Mr. Richards," Delilah interjected smoothly. "I didn't secure his grip on the glass properly." Her hands moved in reassuring signs as she spoke, It's okay. Accidents happen. Jacob's jaw clenched for a moment before he forced a laugh. Nonsense, Delilah. But thank you for trying to protect him. Ethan needs to learn responsibility for his actions. As Ethan hurried toward the house, Delilah noticed him flinch when his father's hand briefly touched his shoulder. She frowned, filing away the reaction in her growing mental catalog of concerning behaviors. Later that evening, as the sky deepened to purple and the last guest departed, Delilah began clearing away glasses and plates. Her thoughts drifted to her own daughter, Mia, probably finishing homework at their neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez's apartment. At 13, Mia was already so responsible, understanding why her mother had to work such long hours. He's just shy, that's all. Caroline's voice drifted from the patio, where she sat with Margaret Whitaker, who had lingered after the party. But not speaking at all? Margaret pressed. Have you considered therapy? I know an excellent child psychologist. We've consulted the best specialists. Caroline cut in, her tone growing brittle. Jacob, and I know what's best for our son. Delilah moved quietly past them into the house, carrying a stack of plates to the kitchen. The mansion was vast, over 8,000 square feet of marble floors and vaulted ceilings. But despite its grandeur, it always felt cold, as if the walls themselves held secrets. She found Ethan in the kitchen, still in his juice-stained shirt, attempting to reach a cookie jar on a high shelf. Without hesitation, she set down her load and moved to help him. Would you like one? She signed. Ethan nodded eagerly, then glanced nervously toward the patio doors where his mother's voice could still be heard. Our secret, Delilah signed with a conspiratorial wink, retrieving 2 chocolate chip cookies. As they shared their illicit snack, she studied the boy's face. Despite his silence, his eyes spoke volumes: intelligence, fear, and something else she couldn't quite name. Delilah. Caroline's voice made them both start. Ethan quickly brushed cookie crumbs from his shirt as his mother entered the kitchen. It's time for Ethan's bath and bed. Of course, Mrs. Richards. I'll take care of it right away. Caroline nodded absently, her attention already on her phone. Jacob's in his study. He's not to be disturbed. After running Ethan's bath and helping him into his pajamas, Delilah began their nightly routine of tucking him in. The boy's room was impeccably decorated in blues and grays, but it felt sterile, more like a furniture showroom than a child's sanctuary. As she pulled the covers up to his chin, Ethan's hands moved in the dim light. Hide. Delilah paused. Hide? Do you want to play a game? But Ethan's expression was serious, his eyes wide and imploring. Before she could ask more, rapid footsteps in the hallway made him burrow deeper under his covers. Jacob appeared in the doorway, his commanding presence filling the room. Everything all right in here? Yes, sir, Delilah answered. Just finished story time. Good. His eyes swept the room before landing on his son. Sleep well, Ethan. Remember what we discussed about behavior at events? Ethan gave a tiny nod, and Delilah noticed his hands clutching the blanket so tightly his knuckles were white. After leaving Ethan's room, Delilah began her final cleaning duties for the night. As she descended to the first floor, she passed the basement door, heavy oak with an industrial-grade lock that seemed out of place in the elegant home. Curious, she tested the handle, finding it securely fastened as always. The sound of approaching footsteps made her step back quickly. Did you need something? Caroline asked, appearing at the end of the hallway. No, ma'am. I was just checking all the doors before leaving. The basement remains locked at all times, Caroline said flatly. It's just storage, nothing of interest. But as Delilah gathered her things to leave for the night, she couldn't shake the feeling that nothing about this family was quite what it seemed. She thought of Ethan's strange sign, hide, and the way he flinched at his father's touch. The locked basement door. The perfect facade that felt paper-thin. Walking to her car, she pulled out her phone to check on Mia. The screen showed a text from her daughter. Hope work was okay, Mom. Mrs. Rodriguez made enchiladas. Delilah smiled, but her joy was tempered by worry. She needed this job. The Richards paid 3 times what she'd made at her previous positions, enough to finally start saving for Mia's college fund. But something felt wrong in that house, and her instincts had never led her astray. As she drove home through the wealthy neighborhood, past houses that could fit 3 of her apartment inside them, Delilah made a decision. She would watch more carefully, document anything suspicious. Ethan's silence spoke volumes, and she intended to listen. The next morning, she arrived early as usual, letting herself in with her key. The house was quiet except for the distant hum of the air conditioning. As she began preparing breakfast, movement caught her eye. Ethan, still in his pajamas, hovering in the doorway. "Good morning," she signed with a warm smile. He approached cautiously, hands moving. "Help me." Before Delilah could respond, heavy footsteps sounded on the stairs. Ethan's eyes went wide with fear, and he darted away just as Jacob entered the kitchen, already dressed for work in another impeccable suit. "Ah, Delilah. Coffee ready?" "Yes, sir. Just finished brewing." As she poured his coffee, Delilah's mind raced. In 6 months, she'd never seen Ethan sign those words before. The desperate plea in his eyes haunted her as she moved through her morning tasks, all too aware of the locked basement door just down the hall and the secrets it might contain. Little did she know, this was only the beginning. The perfect facade of the Richards family was about to crack, and what lay beneath would change everything, not just for Ethan, but for Delilah herself. The only question was, would she be brave enough to face the truth when she found it? And would she be able to protect both Ethan and her own daughter when the darkness finally came to light? The autumn wind rattled against the kitchen windows as Delilah prepared Ethan's after-school snack. 2 weeks had passed since the charity event, and her unease about the Richards household had only grown stronger. She arranged apple slices into a smile on the plate, adding a small handful of graham crackers, a treat she knew Ethan loved but rarely got to enjoy. The sound of the front door opening announced Ethan's return from school. His footsteps were always quiet, like a ghost moving through the massive house. When he appeared in the kitchen doorway, his blue backpack clutched tight against his chest, Delilah noticed something different in his expression, a new tension around his eyes. "Hello," she signed, smiling warmly. "Hungry?" Ethan nodded, but didn't move toward the snack. His hands trembled slightly as he set down his backpack and began to sign. "Don't tell." "Danger." Delilah's heart skipped a beat. "What kind of danger, sweetheart?" "You can tell me anything." But Ethan's eyes darted toward the doorway, and his hands fell still. "Hurt," he signed quickly, before wrapping his arms around himself. "Who's hurt?" Delilah kept her voice gentle, crouching down to his level. "Did something happen at school?" Before Ethan could respond, Caroline's heels clicked on the marble floors. Ethan immediately grabbed an apple slice and began eating as if nothing had happened, though Delilah noticed how his shoulders hunched forward protectively. "Ethan, homework first, then snacks. You know the rules," Caroline said, barely glancing up from her phone. "Delilah, Jacob wants the silver polish before the dinner party tomorrow night." "Yes, Mrs. Richards," Delilah replied, watching Ethan's face fall as she cleared away his snack. As she worked through her afternoon tasks, his signs kept replaying in her mind. "Don't tell." "Danger." "Hurt." That evening, while organizing the laundry room, Delilah heard the distinct sound of the basement door opening and closing. Through the laundry room's ventilation grate, she could hear Jacob's footsteps descending the stairs, followed by the heavy click of the lock engaging. She paused her folding, straining to listen. Muffled sounds drifted up through the grate, something that might have been voices, or maybe just the old house settling. After several minutes, she heard what sounded like scratching or scraping, but it was too faint to be sure. "Just your imagination," she muttered to herself, returning to her work. But an hour later, when Jacob emerged from the basement, she noticed his typically immaculate shirt was slightly wrinkled, and there was a thin sheen of sweat on his forehead despite the house's perfect climate control. The next morning, while helping Ethan dress for school, Delilah's blood ran cold. As she rolled up the sleeves of his uniform shirt, she spotted them, faint purple bruises circling his wrists, like someone had gripped them too tightly. "Ethan," she breathed, gently touching the marks. "What happened?" His hands moved quickly. Fell. Fell how? Delilah pressed, keeping her voice calm despite her racing heart. Ethan's eyes welled with tears, but he just repeated the sign. Fell. 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 "It's okay," she soothed, pulling him into a gentle hug. "You're safe with me." But she felt him trembling, and when she pulled back, the fear in his eyes made her stomach clench. Later that day, while dusting the study, Delilah's cloth caught on something in the back of a drawer. Investigating, she discovered a small key taped beneath the drawer's false bottom. Her heart pounded as she realized what it must be for. The basement door. She held the key in her palm, its weight seeming far heavier than it should. How easy it would be to wait until the family was asleep, to slip downstairs and finally see what Jacob was hiding. But the risk, if she was caught, she'd lose her job. Worse, she'd lose any chance of helping Ethan. Carefully, she returned the key to its hiding place. Not yet, she decided. She needed more information first. That evening, as Delilah prepared dinner, Jacob appeared in the kitchen doorway. His presence seemed to suck all the warmth from the room. "Delilah," he said, his voice deceptively casual. "We need to discuss some boundaries." She turned from the stove, wiping her hands on her apron. "Sir, I've noticed you've grown quite attached to Ethan." He moved closer, his tall frame blocking the kitchen door. "While we appreciate your attention to his needs, you need to remember your place. You're the housekeeper, not his mother." "I assure you, Mr. Richards, I'm simply doing my job," Delilah replied, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Are you?" His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Teaching him sign language, giving him extra snacks, hugging him? That seems beyond your job description. I thought it would help him communicate better. Stay in your lane, Delilah." All pretense of friendliness vanished from his voice. "Focus on your work. Nothing more. Are we clear?" "Yes, sir," she managed, her hands gripping the counter behind her. "Good." He turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Delilah, I'd hate for you to lose such a well-paying position, especially with a daughter to support." The threat hung in the air long after he left. Delilah's hands shook as she returned to cooking, her mind racing. In the doorway, she caught a glimpse of Caroline hurrying past, obviously having overheard everything, but choosing to remain silent, as always. 2 nights later, Delilah was finishing up her evening duties when a delivery truck pulled into the driveway. Through the kitchen window, she watched Jacob meet a man she'd never seen before, tall, muscular, with a military-style haircut. "Timing is crucial," she heard Jacob say as they moved past the window. "We can't afford any mistakes." "Everything's arranged," the man replied in a low voice. "The buyers are ready. We just need to keep things quiet for a few more days." Delilah pretended to be absorbed in wiping down the counter as they entered the kitchen. Jacob's eyes narrowed slightly when he saw her, but he simply said, "That's all for tonight, Delilah. You can head home." She gathered her things quickly, her mind spinning with possibilities, each more terrible than the last. What were they buying? Who were these people? And what did it have to do with the basement? That night, she was awakened by her phone ringing, the Richards house number flashing on the screen. It was just past midnight. "Hello," she answered, already reaching for her clothes. "Delilah." Caroline's voice was tight with tension. "I'm sorry to call so late, but it's Ethan. He had a nightmare and won't calm down. He keeps asking for you." 20 minutes later, Delilah rushed into Ethan's room to find him curled into a tight ball on his bed, tears streaming down his face. Caroline hovered uncertainly in the doorway, while Jacob stood by the window, his expression unreadable. "I'll handle this," Delilah said quietly. After a moment's hesitation, Caroline nodded and led Jacob from the room, closing the door behind them. "Oh, sweetheart," Delilah murmured, sitting gently on the edge of Ethan's bed. His hands moved frantically in the dim light. Bad people. Scared. Bad people. What bad people? She asked, but he just shook his head violently, grabbing her arm when she shifted slightly. His message was clear: don't leave me. For the next hour, she sat with him, humming softly and running her fingers through his hair until his breathing finally evened out in sleep. As she crept from his room, she heard voices from Jacob's study. "This is exactly what I was talking about," Jacob was saying. "He's too attached to her. It's dangerous." She calmed him down. Caroline replied wearily, "No one else could have dashed. That's the problem. He needs to learn to depend on us, not some hired help." Delilah slipped quietly down the stairs and out to her car, her decision made. The next afternoon, she met her friend Sandra at a cafe far from the Richards neighborhood. "You're not going to believe what's been happening," Delilah said, after checking to make sure no one was within earshot. She told Sandra everything: the bruises, the basement, Jacob's threats, the mysterious delivery man, and Ethan's increasingly desperate attempts to communicate something terrible. Sandra listened intently, her face growing more concerned with each detail. "Delilah, this sounds really dangerous," she said finally. "You need to be careful. Maybe you should look for another job." "I can't leave him there," Delilah insisted. "Something's very wrong in that house, Sandra. I can feel it. But what about Mia? You're a single mother. You can't risk losing this job. And if whatever's going on is as bad as you think—" Sandra leaned forward, lowering her voice. "These people sound dangerous. Really dangerous." Delilah stared into her cooling coffee, seeing Ethan's frightened face in her mind. "I know," she said quietly. "But if something happened to him, and I could have stopped it—" She looked up at her friend. "I'd never forgive myself." Sandra reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Just promise me you'll be careful. Document everything. And if you find anything concrete, go straight to the police." "I promise," Delilah said, but her stomach churned with anxiety. She thought of the basement key, still hidden in Jacob's study. Whatever secrets that basement held, she was becoming increasingly certain she would have to discover them soon, before it was too late. As she drove home that evening, her phone buzzed with a text from Caroline. "Jacob's having associates over tomorrow night. Need you to stay late to serve drinks." Delilah's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Perhaps tomorrow would provide the opportunity she needed to learn more about these mysterious associates and what they were really buying from Jacob Richards. But as she pulled into her apartment complex, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was running out of time. Ethan's signs kept flashing through her mind. Don't tell. Danger. Hurt. Bad people. What secrets lay behind that basement door? And more importantly, would she be brave enough to face them when she finally found out? The autumn wind picked up, sending dead leaves skittering across her windshield like warning signs, pointing toward a truth she wasn't sure she was ready to discover. The morning light filtered through the kitchen windows as Delilah prepared breakfast, her movements mechanical while her mind churned with worry. It had been 3 days since the late-night gathering of Jacob's associates, and something about their hushed conversations and furtive glances had left her deeply unsettled. A soft shuffle of feet made her turn. Ethan stood in the doorway, still in his pajamas, his face unusually pale. His hands began moving before she could even greet him. "Help me. Please help me." This time, there was an urgency she'd never seen before. He grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the hallway, pointing insistently at the basement door. "Don't let them see," he signed repeatedly, tears welling in his eyes. "Ethan," Delilah whispered, crouching down to his level. "I promise I'll help you, but you need to tell me what's wrong. What's in the basement?" His hands trembled as he started to sign, but footsteps on the stairs made him freeze. Jacob appeared, already dressed for work in one of his expensive suits. "Ethan, why aren't you dressed for school?" His voice was sharp. "Go upstairs. Now." Ethan's eyes met Delilah's for one desperate moment before he hurried away. Jacob watched him go, then turned to Delilah with a cold smile. "Caroline and I will be at the Children's Hope Foundation Gala tonight. We'll need you to stay late with Ethan." "Of course, Mr. Richards," Delilah replied, her heart racing. This could be her chance. The day crawled by with excruciating slowness. Delilah went about her usual tasks while mentally preparing herself for what she might find. At 7 p.m., Jacob and Caroline departed in their Mercedes. Caroline resplendent in a designer gown, Jacob handsome in his tuxedo. The perfect philanthropic couple. Delilah waited 30 minutes after they left, making sure they wouldn't return for anything forgotten. She helped Ethan with his evening routine, tucking him into bed with extra care. "I'm going to make everything okay," she whispered, signing along with her words. "I promise." His small hand caught hers as she turned to leave. "Be careful," he signed, his eyes wide with fear. After making sure Ethan was settled, Delilah retrieved the spare key from Jacob's study. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped it as she approached the basement door. The house was silent except for the hum of the central air and her own thundering heartbeat. The key slid into the lock smoothly, turning with a soft click that seemed deafening in the quiet hallway. Delilah pulled out her phone, turning on its flashlight before beginning her descent down the stairs. The basement was finished, like the rest of the house, with the same expensive tiles and crown molding. But something felt wrong about the dimensions. The space seemed smaller than it should be, given the size of the house above. Her flashlight beam caught a slight irregularity in the wall paneling. Pressing against it revealed a seam, a hidden door. Behind it lay another room, and as Delilah stepped inside, her world tilted on its axis. The walls were lined with filing cabinets and corkboards. Photos of children, dozens of them, were pinned up alongside documents that looked like passports. But the faces in the passport photos didn't match the children's pictures beside them. With trembling fingers, Delilah pulled out her phone and began taking photos. She opened one of the filing cabinets, finding folders filled with more photos, documents, and handwritten lists of names with dates and numbers beside them. Some had been crossed out, others highlighted in different colors. "Oh God," she whispered, recognizing some of the highlighted names from Jacob's recent dinner party, his associates. But it was the next room that made her stomach heave. A heavy door with multiple locks opened into a space that could only be described as a cell. Though empty now, the evidence of its purpose was clear. A small bed with restraints attached to the frame, toys scattered across the floor as if to mock the horror of their purpose, and worst of all, scratch marks on the walls near the bed. Delilah's hands shook as she photographed everything, tears streaming down her face. In one corner, she found a child's drawing partially crumpled and discarded. The crude figure showed a tall man, a crying child, and what looked like chains. The signature at the bottom made her heart stop. "Ethan, oh, baby," she breathed, suddenly understanding the source of his silence, his fear, the bruises. He hadn't just witnessed these horrors. He'd lived them. And now his father was doing the same to other children. A wave of nausea hit her as the pieces clicked into place. The late-night basement visits, the mysterious deliveries, the buyers that man had mentioned. Jacob Richards wasn't just hiding evidence. He was actively trafficking children through his own basement, using his reputation and charity work as a cover. Moving quickly now, Delilah photographed every document she could find, every list of names, every passport. Her hands trembled with equal parts rage and heartbreak as she thought of Ethan living above this chamber of horrors, carrying this terrible secret. A sound from upstairs made her freeze. The distant slam of a car door. "No, no, no," she whispered, checking her phone. It was only 9:30. They weren't supposed to be back for hours. Moving as quickly as she dared, Delilah returned everything to its exact position, her heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe. She closed the hidden door, praying she'd left it aligned correctly, then hurried up the basement stairs. The sound of keys in the front door spurred her into action. She barely had time to lock the basement and slipped the key in her pocket before the front door opened. "Delilah," Caroline's voice called out. "Why are all the lights off down here? Think fast, think fast." "Just finished checking the downstairs, Mrs. Richards," she called back, forcing her voice to stay steady as she moved toward the foyer. "I was about to head up to check on Ethan." Jacob and Caroline appeared, still in their formal wear. "The gala was unbearably dull," Caroline said, removing her earrings. "Everyone asking about donations when half of them barely give anything themselves." How ironic, Delilah thought, fighting to keep her face neutral as she looked at Jacob. This monster who used charity as camouflage for his real business. "Everything quiet here?" Jacob asked, his eyes boring into hers. "Yes, sir." Ethan went to bed without any trouble. Was she imagining the way his gaze lingered on her? Did he somehow know? "You can go home now," he said finally. "But first, bring me my briefcase from the study. I have some work to finish tonight." Delilah's blood ran cold. The key. She had to return it before he noticed it was missing. "Of course, sir." She hurried to the study, her mind racing. The briefcase sat on his desk, and next to it, thank God, lay a stack of papers that had been knocked askew. Moving quickly, she replaced the key in its hiding place while pretending to straighten the papers. When she returned with the briefcase, Jacob was alone in the foyer, Caroline having gone upstairs. He took the briefcase, then caught her arm as she turned to leave. "You seem nervous tonight, Delilah." "Just tired, sir," she managed. "It's been a long day." His grip tightened slightly. "You know you can always come to me if something's bothering you." The threat in his words was clear. Delilah forced a smile. "Everything's fine, sir. Good night." She could feel his eyes on her back as she walked to her car. Her hand shook so badly, she could barely get the key in the ignition. Only when she was several blocks away did she pull over, finally giving in to the sobs that had been building in her chest. The images from the basement flashed through her mind. The photos, the restraints, Ethan's drawing. She thought of his silent pleas for help, and all the other children whose names were on those lists. Taking several deep breaths, she pulled out her phone and began backing up the photos to her secure cloud storage. If anything happened to her, the evidence would still exist. The next morning, she arrived at work to find Ethan waiting for her in the kitchen. His hands moved urgently as soon as he saw her. "Bad people coming. Careful. Did you see something?" "Hear something?" she asked quietly, checking to make sure they were alone. Ethan nodded frantically. "Father angry. Phone calls all night." Delilah's stomach clenched. Had Jacob discovered someone had been in the basement? Or was this about his next delivery? Before she could ask more, Jacob's voice rang out from the doorway. "Ethan, get your backpack. I'm driving you to school today." The look of terror that crossed Ethan's face made Delilah step forward instinctively. "I can take him, sir. It's on my way to pick up your dry cleaning." "That won't be necessary." Jacob's tone left no room for argument. "In fact, take the morning off, Delilah. Come back after lunch." As Jacob led Ethan away, the boy looked back at her one last time, his hands forming a clear message. "Help me." Delilah watched them drive away, her heart racing. She couldn't wait any longer. She had the evidence now. Photos of documents, lists of names, proof of the horror happening beneath this perfect house. But as she drove home to review the photos and decide her next move, she couldn't shake the feeling that Jacob suspected something. Had she left some trace in the basement? Had he noticed something in her expression? More importantly, what would he do to protect his secrets? The images from the basement haunted her. The tiny bed with its restraints, the scratch marks on the walls, Ethan's heartbreaking drawing. She thought of her own daughter, Mia, safe at school, and all the other children who weren't safe, whose names were written in Jacob's files. She had promised Ethan she would help him. Now she had to figure out how to do that without getting them both killed. Because one thing was clear, Jacob Richards would do anything to keep his secrets buried. And Delilah had just dug them all up. Thunder rumbled in the distance as Delilah stood in her small apartment, staring at the evidence spread across her kitchen table. The photos from the basement seemed to stare back at her, Faces of children, coded documents, that terrible room with its restraints and scratch marks. She'd spent the morning organizing everything, backing up files, preparing herself for what she had to do. A text from Caroline lit up her phone. "Where are you?" Jacob's asking. Delilah took a deep breath, slipping her phone into her pocket, making sure it was already recording. She decided during her morning off that there was only one way forward. No more hiding, no more pretending she didn't know. She had to confront them directly. The drive to the Richards mansion felt simultaneously too long and too short. Rain had started to fall, drops hitting her windshield like tears. She thought of Mia, safely at her friend's house for a sleepover, and said a silent prayer that she was making the right choice. When she arrived, Jacob was waiting in his study, Caroline hovering nervously beside his desk. "Ah, Delilah," Jacob said, his voice dangerously soft. "Would you care to explain your absence this morning?" Delilah closed the study door behind her, standing tall despite her trembling hands. "Actually, sir, I think you're the one who needs to explain something." His eyebrows rose slightly. "Oh, I know what's in the basement." The words hung in the air like smoke. Caroline's face went white, while Jacob's expression hardened into something terrible. "I know about the hidden room," Delilah continued, her voice growing stronger. "The photos, the passports, the lists of names. I know what you're doing to those children." Jacob stood slowly, his height making him tower over his desk. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Delilah pulled out her phone, holding it up to show one of the photos she'd taken. Should I describe the room with the restraints? The toys scattered around like some sick joke? Or maybe we should talk about Ethan's drawing I found there. "Jacob," Caroline whispered, gripping the back of a chair. "She is proof." "Shut up," he snapped at his wife before turning back to Delilah. His attempt at a smile looked more like a snarl. "You're playing a very dangerous game, Delilah. Think about what you're doing. Think about your daughter." "Don't you dare mention my daughter," Delilah shot back, even as fear clawed at her throat. "Such dedication to your principles," Jacob said, moving around his desk. "But what will happen to Mia when you lose your job? When no one else will hire you because of the awful things you've been saying about her previous employers? Single mothers don't fare well in custody battles, especially unemployed ones with histories of making false accusations. They're not false accusations when I have proof." "Proof?" He laughed, the sound chilling. "You broke into my private property, illegally took photos, if they even exist. Who do you think the police will believe? The respected businessman and philanthropist, or the desperate single mother trying to extort money from her employers?" Caroline stepped forward, her face pleading. "Delilah, please. You don't understand. We're helping these children, giving them better lives. Better lives?" Delilah's voice cracked with disgust. "By chaining them to beds? By selling them to your associates? How do you sleep at night?" "You self-righteous bitch," Jacob snarled, all pretense of civility gone. "You have no idea what you're involved in. This is bigger than you can imagine. We have connections you couldn't dream of. One phone call, and you'll never see your precious daughter again." A small movement caught Delilah's eye. Through the study's glass doors, she saw Ethan in the hallway, watching with wide eyes. His hands moved quickly. "Ron, you're right about one thing," Delilah said, her heart pounding as she kept Jacob talking. "This is bigger than me. That's why I've already backed up every photo, every document. If anything happens to me or my daughter, it all goes public." Jacob's face contorted with rage. He lunged forward, grabbing her arm so hard she cried out. "You stupid woman. Do you think that matters? Do you think anyone will find your body when we're done with you?" "Jacob!" Caroline gasped. The boy dashed, but it was too late. Jacob's mask had slipped completely, and his next words were caught clearly by Delilah's still recording phone. "Did you think you could expose our operation? That you could threaten years of careful work? We've moved dozens of children through that basement. Our buyers pay hundreds of thousands for each one. The police can't touch us. The judges are in our pocket. And you're nothing, but a disposable maid who's outlived her usefulness. A crash from the hallway made them all turn. Ethan had knocked over an expensive vase, creating a distraction. In that moment of chaos, Delilah wrenched free from Jacob's grip and ran. "Ethan, come on," she screamed, grabbing the boy's hand as she fled past him. "Stop them!" Jacob roared behind them. The sound of his footsteps pounding down the hall spurred them faster. They raced through the house, Jacob's rage-filled voice getting closer. At the front door, Delilah fumbled with the locks as Ethan's hands moved frantically. "Hurry, hurry." Finally, the door opened. They burst out into the rain, running for Delilah's car. She could hear Jacob behind them, Caroline's voice calling out in the background. "Get in." Delilah yanked open the passenger door, practically throwing Ethan inside before running around to the driver's side. Her trembling hands barely got the key in the ignition as Jacob reached the car. He slammed his fist against her window. "Open this door, or I swear to God, Dash." The engine roared to life. Delilah threw the car into reverse, forcing Jacob to jump back. His face, contorted with murderous rage, was the last thing she saw in her rearview mirror as they sped away. Her phone was already ringing, Sandra's number lighting up the screen. Delilah hit the speaker button with shaking hands. "Sandra, thank God. Call the police. Tell them everything I told you about the Richards. I have proof now. Photos and a recording of Jacob confessing everything. I have Ethan with me. We're running Dash. I already called them." Sandra's voice was tight with worry. "They're sending units to the house now." "Where are you?" "Driving. I don't know where Dash." Delilah checked her mirrors frantically, expecting to see Jacob's Mercedes pursuing them. "Listen to me," Sandra said firmly. "My brother's precinct is coordinating everything. Go to the police station on 5th Street. Detective Martinez is waiting for you. They're preparing to raid the house, but they need your evidence." Delilah glanced at Ethan, who sat huddled in the passenger seat, his face pale but determined. "We're heading there now." "Sandra, thank you. Just be careful. That man Dash." "I know." Delilah's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I recorded everything. The threats, the confession about the trafficking, all of it." She ended the call and dialed 911, keeping one eye on her mirrors as she drove. "This is Delilah Martinez. I'm heading to the 5th Street station with evidence of a child trafficking operation run by Jacob Richards. I have his son Ethan with me. We're fleeing the house after Mr. Richards threatened to kill me. I have photos of their operation and a recorded confession. Units are already en route to both locations, ma'am," the dispatcher assured her. "Detective Martinez has been briefed. Keep driving directly to the station. Do not stop for anyone." The rain was falling harder now, making it difficult to see. Delilah reached over and squeezed Ethan's hand. "It's going to be okay," she told him, signing one-handed. "You're safe now. They can't hurt you anymore." Tears rolled down his cheeks, but he managed a small smile. His free hand moved in a simple sign, "Thank you." When they reached the police station, it was like entering a fortress of safety. Detective Martinez, Sandra's brother, was waiting with a team of officers. They whisked Delilah and Ethan inside, immediately taking them to a secure room. "The raid team is in position," Martinez told them as a female officer brought them both hot chocolate. "We've had the Richards under surveillance since Sandra called this morning. No one's leaving that house." Delilah connected her phone to the detective's computer, transferring all the photos and the recording. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking as she described everything she'd found in the basement. "My God," Martinez muttered, looking through the evidence. Into his radio he said, "All units, move in. I repeat, move in. We have probable cause and electronic evidence of trafficking operations." On the station's security monitors, they watched the feed from the police cameras. Squad cars converged on the Richards mansion, lights flashing through the rain. SWAT teams breached the front and back entrances simultaneously. Ethan pressed against Delilah's side as they watched Jacob and Caroline being let out in handcuffs. Even from the grainy security footage, Jacob's rage was visible as he was forced into a police car. They found 2 more children hidden in the basement, Martinez reported, listening to his radio. Medical teams are en route. The crime scene unit is cataloging everything, with the photos, the recording, and the physical evidence. He smiled grimly. They're not getting away with this. Delilah pulled Ethan into a tight hug, finally letting her own tears fall. It's over, she whispered, signing the words against his back. It's really over. Outside the station, the storm was beginning to clear, rays of sunlight breaking through the clouds. Like the first light of dawn after the darkest night, Delilah thought, holding Ethan close. They had made it through the darkness together, and now it was time to heal. The morning headlines screamed across every local paper. Prominent philanthropist and wife arrested in child trafficking ring. The Richards mansion, once a symbol of wealth and respectability, now stood empty behind crime scene tape, its dark secrets finally exposed to the light of day. Detective Martinez held a press conference on the steps of the police station, cameras flashing as he detailed the horrifying scope of the operation. The investigation has revealed a sophisticated trafficking network spanning multiple states, he announced, his voice grave. Thanks to the evidence provided by Ms. Delilah Martinez, no relation, we've identified over 24 victims from the past 3 years alone. The Richards used their charity work and social standing to facilitate these crimes, making their actions all the more reprehensible. In the following days, more revelations emerged. Jacob's associates were arrested across the country. Offshore accounts were frozen, containing millions in blood money. Caroline Richards, facing her own charges, began cooperating with authorities, revealing names of other traffickers and buyers. The community reeled from the revelations. The same socialites who had once fawned over Caroline at charity galas now expressed shock and disgust. There was always something off about them, they whispered, though none had ever spoken up before. Meanwhile, in a cozy foster home across town, Ethan was beginning his journey of healing. His temporary foster parents, Tom and Beth Parker, were experienced in caring for traumatized children. They worked closely with Dr. Sarah Chun, a child psychologist specializing in trauma therapy. During his 3rd session, Ethan surprised Dr. Chun by bringing a photo of Delilah that he kept under his pillow. Through sign language, he explained how she had been the first person to really see him, to notice his pain and do something about it. Tell me about Delilah, Dr. Chun encouraged gently. Ethan's hands moved with growing confidence. She made me feel safe. She learned a sign just for me. She saved me from the bad place. In subsequent sessions, Ethan began to open up about the horrors he had witnessed in the basement. How his father had forced him to stay silent by threatening to hurt him and other children. How his mother had turned away, pretending not to see. And how Delilah had been the light in his darkness. Delilah visited him 3 times a week, always bringing small gifts, books, art supplies, or his favorite cookies. She marveled at the changes in him. Though still quiet, he smiled more often now, his eyes brighter, his shoulders straighter. The community's gratitude manifested in unexpected ways. A local law firm offered pro bono services to help Delilah navigate the legal aftermath. The Children's Hope Foundation, under new leadership, created a whistleblower fund in her name. Anonymous donations helped her secure a 3-bedroom house in a safe neighborhood, with a backyard where Mia could practice soccer. "Mom, is Ethan going to live with us someday?" Mia asked one evening, helping Delilah prepare for another visit. At 13, she had shown remarkable maturity about the whole situation, even offering to share her room if needed. "I don't know, sweetheart," Delilah answered honestly. "But I hope so." That hope grew stronger with each visit. Tom and Beth reported that Ethan asked for Delilah constantly, showing more animation and progress when she was around. Dr. Chin noted in her reports that Ethan's strongest positive associations were with Delilah and Mia, whom he had begun to think of as a sister. The breakthrough came 4 months after the arrests. Delilah was sitting with Ethan in the Parkers' living room, looking through a picture book together. She had just finished signing a funny comment about one of the illustrations when it happened. "Thank you, Mom." The words were soft, slightly rusty from disuse, but clear. Delilah froze, her heart stopping for a moment before racing forward. "Ethan," she whispered, turning to face him. Tears were streaming down his face, but he was smiling. "Thank you for saving me, Mom." Delilah pulled him into her arms, her own tears falling freely as she held him close. Beth Parker, watching from the doorway, quietly pulled out her phone to record the moment for Dr. Chen. That evening, Delilah couldn't stop thinking about Ethan's words. She lay awake in bed, remembering every moment since she'd first met him. The quiet boy who had trusted her with his silence, and now with his voice. The next morning, she called her pro bono lawyer, Lisa Thompson. "I want to adopt Ethan," she said without preamble. "What do I need to do?" Lisa's response was cautiously optimistic. "It won't be easy. You're single, and there will be concerns about your financial stability. But," she paused, "you have a lot in your favor. Your role in exposing the trafficking ring, the obvious bond between you and Ethan, his clear desire to be with you, and the community support you've garnered. Let me make some calls." The adoption process was indeed challenging. There were home studies to pass, interviews to complete, and mountains of paperwork. But Delilah was no longer alone in her fight. The Parkers provided glowing recommendations. Dr. Chen submitted reports detailing Ethan's remarkable progress in Delilah's presence. Even Detective Martinez testified about her character and courage. 6 months after Ethan's first words, they all gathered in a small courtroom. Judge Maria Ramirez smiled as she reviewed the final adoption papers. "In all my years on the bench," she said, "I've rarely seen such compelling evidence of a true parent-child bond. Ms. Martinez, your actions in saving Ethan showed extraordinary courage. But it's the love and dedication you've shown since then that truly demonstrates your fitness as a parent." She turned to Ethan, who sat between Delilah and Mia. "Young man, do you wish to be adopted by Ms. Martinez?" Ethan stood, his voice quiet but steady. "Yes, Your Honor. I want her to be my mom forever." There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom when Judge Ramirez signed the papers, making official what their hearts had known for months. They were a family. The adoption party at their new home was small but joyful. Sandra brought a homemade cake. The Parkers came with armfuls of presents. Dr. Chen watched proudly as Ethan laughed with Mia, the two children already perfectly in sync as siblings. But it wasn't enough for Delilah to save just one child. The horror she had uncovered in the Richards' basement haunted her, driving her to do more. Using her connections and the settlement money from the Richards' seized assets, she established the Silent Voices Foundation. The foundation's mission was twofold: to support victims of child trafficking and to train people to recognize the signs she had seen in Ethan. Within its first year, the organization helped rescue 15 children and provided therapy for dozens more. Ethan and Mia became regular fixtures at foundation events, with Ethan particularly passionate about teaching other kids sign language. His own voice grew stronger each day, but he never forgot how signing had given him a way to ask for help when he needed it most. One evening, about a year after the adoption, Delilah was preparing dinner while Mia helped Ethan with his homework at the kitchen table. The scene was so beautifully normal it made her heart ache with joy. "Mom," Ethan called out, and her heart still skipped every time he said it. "Can you help me with this math problem?" "Of course, sweetheart." She wiped her hands and moved to stand behind his chair. "What are we working on?" "Fractions," Mia answered, making a face. "I told him they're evil. They're not that bad." Delilah laughed, ruffling both their hair. As she helped them work through the problem, she caught sight of their reflection in the window, the three of them huddled together, smiling, completely at ease. The shadows that had once haunted Ethan's eyes were gone, replaced by the light of love and security. Later that night, after the kids were in bed, Delilah sat in their small but cozy living room, surrounded by framed photos of their growing family. There they were at the beach, Ethan and Mia building sandcastles. At Mia's soccer game, Ethan cheering louder than anyone. At the foundation's first fundraiser, all three of them dressed up and beaming. Her phone buzzed with a text from Detective Martinez. 2 more arrests today. Network getting smaller thanks to your foundation's work. Delilah smiled, thinking of all the children who would sleep safely tonight because people had learned to see the signs, to listen to the silence, to take action instead of looking away. A soft sound made her look up. Ethan stood in the doorway in his pajamas. "Can't sleep?" she asked. He shook his head, coming to curl up beside her on the couch. "Had a good dream this time," he said quietly. "About the day you saved me." Delilah pulled him close, breathing in the scent of his shampoo. "You saved yourself too, you know. You were so brave to keep trying to tell me what was wrong." "We saved each other," he said, his voice sure and clear. "That's what families do." She kissed the top of his head, marveling at how far they'd come from those dark days of secrets and fear. They had built something beautiful from the ashes of tragedy, not just a family, but a mission to ensure no child would suffer in silence as Ethan had. "Mom," he murmured, already half asleep. "Yes, baby. I love you. I love you too," she whispered, her heart full to bursting. So very much. Outside, stars twinkled in a clear sky, their light reaching through the darkness to touch 3 people who had found each other against all odds. In the quiet of the night, Delilah sent up a silent prayer of gratitude for the twisted path that had led them here, to love, to healing, to home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new children to save, new battles to fight. But tonight, in this moment, they were simply a family, bound together by love stronger than any darkness. And that, Delilah knew, was the greatest victory of all. What would you do if love and determination could change a life forever? Would you open your heart, or let fear keep it closed? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for joining us on Delilah and Ethan's powerful journey. Their story shows us that even in the darkest moments, compassion and courage can light the way to a brighter future. If their bond and resilience moved you, consider subscribing for more stories that celebrate the strength of the human spirit, the power of kindness, and the beauty of second chances. Your support means the world as I continue to bring you stories that uplift and inspire. Until next time, take care and remember, a single act of love can change a life forever. See you in the next one.